And I'm excited to introduce Sal Attardo. He is from Texas A&M at Commerce, and he'll be speaking to us today about teaching online today. You're up.
Oh, thank you. So let me share my screen. Actually, before I share my screen, so I put up this little poll and 20 people answered, which is awesome. So 80% of the people say that they like it or really like it. 15% is neutral, and only 5% dislike it. So it's interesting to see, this sentiment, because, and I'm sort of I guess getting ahead of myself, but it really actually matches the general feeling in the country. So what we're going to do today, can you all see the screen? Yes.
Yes.
So what we're going to do today is try to get a snapshot of how people feel about today about post-secondary online teaching. Now, obviously, I talk about post-secondary because that's what I do, but this can be generalized to other levels as well. I mean, obviously, with all due differences, but nonetheless. And the biggest point that I wanted to see was, has the pandemic and the fact that a very large part of teaching was moved online because of the pandemic, has that affected things? And the answer to this is yes, it did. And there's pretty good evidence that the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated what was already an underlying trend to move towards online education. What's particularly interesting, and I was surprised to find this, is that this is also true for traditional students, not just adult students. We say over 25 is non-traditional, but this is also true for traditional students, the your 18-year-olds going to college. The attitudes towards online education are improving. And there is a move towards multiple modalities courses, and we'll talk more about that. A very interesting thing for those of you who are faculty is that most of course and program development is generally done in-house, which is, as I like to say, job security for academics. And then finally, that students struggle with engagement in online courses, but live lectures, social interactions, and faculty engagement really help in solving that problem. So this is the short version of my talk. Feel free to leave now, and if you trust me, this is the takeaway. All right, so I went looking for information about how much the pandemic had caused, how much change it had caused, and I found some academic sources that you see there on the left. I picked a couple. These are not from within the U.S., but I thought it was interesting that they are basically saying the same thing, that what normally would have taken many years of persuasion and whatever, because of the pandemic, it happened really fast. Then I found this survey here, done in 2021, but I think it's still relevant. This is a survey of CEOs, presidents, and chancellors, and the like. As you can see, more than 50%, as a result of the pandemic, say that they had increased their interest or their awareness of online teaching. So I think that that is a significant marker in that direction, that the COVID did have an impact. And then I found this other study here. This is a survey of so it's done by EduVenture, and it's so it's a survey of students, and so here they looked at before. So the top bars. I should be able to annotate this. Yeah, so here, this area here is pre-COVID. And so pre-COVID, people were, people who were committed to going to college. As you can see, about 52% were interested in on-campus education, right? So it's like, about 50% are like looking either at fully online or mixed. And as you can see, as it goes to less, sort of more looking towards the future, the number of people who are interested online grows. Okay, so to me, that's an interesting sort of point, because it's saying if it's harder for them to see themselves in college, they think of online education as a solution to that. Okay, because I mean, this part here, the 6 months or more, are people who say, well, if I could, I would go to college, but I can't because of work demands or what have you. All right. So here is a different study. This is a study of people who basically run the online arm of universities. So they interviewed about 250 what they call COO, Chief Online Officer. It's not a real position, but basically people who are in charge of running the online part. And here you see that the vast majority of areas, particularly teaching in flexible modes, has increased or has been strengthened, since 2020. Okay, so since after the pandemic, peaked. So again, this is very revealing, because what it shows is that this is where colleges and universities are putting resources. Okay, so it's really a pointer at the future. And this here is also a very significant marker, because again, we're talking about, these are people whose job is to provide online education, make sure that people can get online education, and they're saying that in their view, the vast majority of people, especially look at the graduate students here, that's 50% of the entire graduate population, is more interested towards online education. I mean, the numbers are still quite high, even for the traditional undergraduates. That's the, I don't even know what the name of this color is, greenish bar. So again, if you look at a bit more and much higher, it's basically everybody. Okay. The other so again, I think we're looking at different castles in a mosaic that points in a very clear direction. Another aspect, which is again a very, very strong indicator, is that there are these very big online only universities. So you have Southern New Hampshire, which has gone from 135,000 students in March of 2020 to 175,000 in 2022. So it's grown. If you look at the under 24-year-old, it got 10,000 more of those 175,000 are from traditional students, right? So again, we kind of knew that non-traditional students are okay with online, but now we're seeing that even the traditional students are going there. So Western Governor, they say over the past 5 years, 18 to 25-year-old population has been one of the fastest growing age categories. University of Maryland Global Campus, they again had an increase from 4,000 to 5,000 students, again in the traditional students, right? So again, that says something. It says that traditional students are no longer or are now interested in online education. Now, having said all this, this here is the smoking gun, as they say in the detective stories. So this is the government data. This is the Department of Education, so it's slightly different because it's distance ed. It's not just online. So this includes, like, for example, courses that are being taught by cable. Okay, I strongly, I mean, I don't have any specific data, but my personal experience is that cable is disappearing because it's super expensive and way more complicated compared to just doing it on the internet. Okay, so I think that when we say distance ed today, we are saying really online education. So the trend is very clear. You start here in 2012, and it grows very slowly and steadily till 2019, and then you get this gigantic spike, which is of course the pandemic, and then in 2021 it goes down a little bit, but it's back high. It's much higher than the baseline was. I mean, it's basically jumped up 20 plus points in percent of students. Okay, so I think that this is as strong evidence, as strong information as we're likely to get, because again, this is these are the statistics from the U.S. Department of Education. This tells us that last year 60% of students were doing distance ed. Okay, that's an incredible number. Again, just so that it registers, it's more than half are enrolled in distance education. Okay, so in other words, face-to-face education is now the minority of education in the US. Okay, let that ferment in your head for a second. All right, so now let's switch to students' attitudes. So again, these are a number of studies that I was able to find. One thing is that students prefer live online lectures as opposed to pre-recorded lectures. I think the answer as to why that would be the case is that it's just more socially engaging to do this. And indeed, social engagement is really the big factor that everybody quotes. Generally speaking, I guess among educators and maybe among students, there is a concern that online education doesn't create as much social engagement as face-to-face. And I mean, sure, there's some kinds of social engagement that online education cannot replicate. But I can tell you that the students in our classes, which are largely online, boy, do they have social engagement of all sorts and all the time. So this idea that that it creates a sense of community, I think, is very real. Now, how do you? So one of the things that gives you this engagement is, of course, interaction with the teachers. So I found this interesting. This is sort of a more practical thing: is how do you increase those? How do you increase contact between the student and the teacher? Well, the first thing is to have the possibility to use multiple modes of communication. So being able to use email, being able to text, being able to chat, being able to ask questions during a live session, that sort of thing, rather than just one way of communicating, let's say just email or something. The other thing, I think this is not that surprising, but basically regular communication, reminders, and making it clear what you expect the students to do, etc. And I mean, in an online environment, it's very easy to do so. You can post your assumptions and your reminders, etc. So it's easy. What's harder is timely and consistent feedback. And probably that's the biggest source of frustration that we've seen, is if the instructor doesn't provide quick feedback, let's say within a week, the students don't like it, because of course they have this feeling of not knowing where they are. I mean, I guess that's true for face-to-face as well. Okay, that is, I don't think this is a discovery of online education. But I think in online education it matters particularly because it's like I think it's heightened by the media. Now the other thing, and that's a rather surprising thing, is for the instructor to take a minimal role in the discussion. In other words, keeping your big mouth shut turns out to be a very important part. I mean, I know it sounds counterintuitive, right? Because we're there to provide wisdom and knowledge. But I can relate a conversation that I had with a student in a discussion, maybe just 2 or 3 days ago, and she said, well, when you answer a question, that shuts up the whole discussion. And I was like, well, yeah, that's true. Because of course the students say, well, why am I bothering to answer that question if he's already answered that, right? So not answering questions. I mean, now obviously, if a student says something wrong, you have to tell them in a discussion, for example, you have to tell them, well, no, that's not quite right. All right. But if you answer all the questions, then it loses the aspect of creating interactions among the students. What about the instructor roles in posing questions? Well, I mean, this is a question that Nikki has put in the chat. Yeah, no, that's of course very, very important. I mean, you can either set it up that you have the questions as prompts, right? Or you can leave it open and say to the students, if you have any questions, go ahead and post them into the discussion. And needless to say, you have to post at least one thing or two. because otherwise the students will say, "Oh, I have no questions." I mean, this is also true in face-to-face, right? I mean, I remember from when I used to teach face-to-face. Any questions? Nothing. Everybody knew everything. The test came, and they would get 20% of the score, right? So, you can set up if there is something that you say, well, this is super important, they should be discussing it. You can set it up. But I find that leaving it open to all the questions is good. And of course, you can do both. You can say, here's a prompt to get you started, and then I want you to put in your own questions. Okay, but I would definitely leave the opportunity, to ask their own questions. And yes, Cynthia agrees with me that yeah, they stop discussing once you post something. Yeah. Also, Maria agrees. All right. Okay, so let's moving on. Oh, somebody apparently scribbled on the screen. Whoever did that, could you please remove it? You can delete the mark. So this here is a survey of students. It's a different survey of students. These were students, so they surveyed students, about 187 students. They said, well, what are your biggest problems with online ed? And as you can see, the biggest problem is the inability to stay engaged during lectures. Okay, that's the top, this item here, the top item. So that's really the biggest problem that they have. As you can see, like things like problems with Zoom or whatever, they're minimal, and they get taken care of very, very quickly. But here, inability to stay engaged, lack of peer interaction, lack of instructor interaction. These are the things where, a significant number of students have a problem with. 72% say that often or always they struggle to stay engaged during lectures. Okay, so definitely that's a problem with that the students notice. All right, so let's move on. Now, this here is another study of 1,400 students, so it's a pretty large study. However, you need to take it with a grain of salt, because this study was run by Western governors, so yeah, they kind of have a pony in the race. However, they say, well, 88% of the students said that they felt that they could easily adapt to online ed. So again, the interesting thing is the non-traditional students who say they perceive that they're learning less effectively online. Okay, which again, it's not like super surprising. Students between 18 and 25 are probably less likely to have the sort of level of concentration that it takes to listen to, a 2-hour lecture on Zoom. But again, if you look at this data here, 2/3 of students surveyed, they feel positively about higher ed adopting more hybrid and online and fully online programs. Okay, so again, it's generally a positive attitude. Here you get this is a different. So I mean, it's the same survey of students, but it's a different question. So it's a comparison between 21 and 22. And as you can see, the attitude changes quite significantly in positive, right? So it goes from 56% in 2021 saying that ed tech, I mean, basically online stuff, enhanced my learning to almost 80%, right? And this here is particularly interesting because it shows these categories here. It shows the differences in modality, right? So here you have synchronous online and asynchronous online. It's this column here, right? And so you can see that the one that does the best is online asynchronous. In other words, students can watch a lecture or interact with the material at a later time. They don't have to do it at the same time as the instructor. And notice this here. Oops, sorry, that was not good. Here, 73% say that they agree that full in person. That's lower than everything else. Okay, so in other words, the students' attitude is that they would rather have online education, asynchronous if possible. Okay, I mean, they're not against in person, but clearly the preference is towards online. This is sort of a related question, but it's a different angle. They're asking them, how prepared do you feel for the next steps in education? And again, here you see the same thing. Here I put this red bar at the 73%. That's the fully in person. And again, it's the lowest score, right? So in other words, the students feel that online prepares them more for their further steps in education. And what is really impressive is the jump from 21 to 22. It goes from 53% positive feeling to 76% positive feeling, right? So that's pretty impressive. Generally speaking, students are comfortable with ed tech, with online, and this includes also using apps and that sort of stuff. And again, the trend is positive, right? 21 to 22, it increases a little bit. And conversely, people who say, well, it was hard to learn to use these new technologies, drops quite a bit. Okay, from 33% that said that it was difficult to less than 20. Okay, and again, the vast majority says, nah, it was easy, not a problem. Obviously here, these questions are polar opposites, right? You do this to ensure that your surveys gives you good results. This is also very interesting. Same deal. We're trying to get at the feeling of students, but divided by age group. Here you have the traditional students, less than 24-year-old. They say full in person are very effective or effective, right? 90% of them say that. But if you look at the non-traditional students, that figure drops down to 71%. Okay, so there's a pretty serious gap here between that. Now, if you go to hybrid, the non-traditional students, it makes absolutely no difference for them. But then if you say, okay, online, the non-traditional students, it jumps to 81%. And here, this is interesting. If you say synchronous, the non-traditional students don't particularly like it. Okay, so we'll get back to this in a minute. It's the asynchronous aspect of online education that's key here. This I thought was interesting because it sort of points towards the future. That is, the idea that, well, if I get a degree online, it's going to be of a lesser quality than if I get it face to face. And it's interesting here to see that the traditional students, about 40% of them feel that way, but the non-traditional students, it drops down to 24%. Okay, and again, if you keep this in mind with the bit of information that we saw earlier, that traditional students' attitudes are moving towards positively towards online education, I think it's revealing of a more general trend. Here, this is again students. They basically ask them, how do you feel about university offering fully online degrees? And so here they ask about the certificates. 70% says it's good, but I think this one is the really key thing, where they say, what about fully online degree programs? And as you can see, 66% of the 1,400 students that were interviewed said that's a good thing. Okay, so again, the attitude is definitely shifting towards online education, even for full degrees, not just, oh, I can take a class or two online. Here we're talking about getting an entire degree. All right. Thank you, Cynthia. All right, so this is what I mentioned earlier about who does this. Who creates these online programs that we're talking about, these online courses. So here, they asked, again, this was the survey of online officers, so technologists at universities. And as you can see, here, let's look at financial aid, the first line. So about 80%, 79% is done fully in-house, 16% mostly in-house, and a very, very tiny sliver, 4%, is outsourced. And the reason is presumably because if you screw up financial aid, the federal government comes down on you like a ton of bricks and takes away your financial aid. And so that's not to mention fines you very so you want to be, you have to have people that know what they're doing and that they're certified and that you can trust them. So that's why it's done fully online. But if you look at things like marketing the program, recruiting students, proctoring, these are things that universities feel comfortable outsourcing. I mean, proctoring, for example, only a third actually does their own proctoring, right? That's interesting in and of itself. Now, what I was interested, of course, was here, it's circled in red, who creates the programs. And there, as you can see, 73% of these are done fully in-house, 22% are done mostly in-house. So that gives you a 95%, very reassuring 95% level. So in other words, faculty are still in control or largely in control of the academics of online courses. And to some some extent of the mechanisms behind them. And I think that that's um, a key aspect of successful online teaching. Now here, again, it's a glimpse at the future. So first of all, notice that the highest bar is this one for asynchronous online courses. 97% of universities in that sample of technologists offer online asynchronous, but only 95% offer face-to-face. Okay, so again, there's like universities where they're not really bothering with face-to-face. We knew that. Hybrid comes in at 90%, and we're going to talk about these definitions in a second. Online synchronous comes in at 83%. Multimodal is the growing category at 60%. All right, and that basically is where you can access the course in under different modalities. Okay, so let's discuss real quick what that means, and then we can wrap up. So when we talk about different modalities, you have full in person, that's your traditional course. Then you have the hybrid approach, where some meetings take place in person in a classroom, and then there is a certain percentage of the course that takes place online. Now, technically speaking, I think that nowadays most courses are in fact hybrid, even if they meet in class every day, because, for example, we went fully online as far as grading goes in our university, years ago. And I know that many universities have done the same. I would be surprised of a university that still uses paper and pencil to deliver grades. So to some extent, that's hybrid. Then you have the online synchronous. It's essentially the same thing as a class. It meets at a certain time, except it meets on Zoom. Okay. Then you have the online asynchronous. It's a fully online course, but there are no meetings at a set time. And then you enter the complex multimodal thing. So where you can do essentially a number of strategies. I see Peggy at UTA says we do high flex. So I'm interested in maybe discussing this later. So you can do side-by-side dual modality. In other words, you have a face-to-face section, and then you have an online section taught by different people, but the students can choose whether they want to come to campus or take the class online. You have the definition of Columbia University of high flex. Essentially, it's the same thing as I said, two classes side by side, but they have the same learning objectives, but they may be taught by a different instructor. And then you have a slightly different approach, which is what we do at the MOOC, where there are two sections that are taught by the same instructor at the same time. So basically, the students in the face-to-face class, the section is broadcast to the students to the online synchronous, and the students can also watch it asynchronously later. Okay, so that's the thing. The other thing that you got to be careful about is the pace of the class. So you can have self-paced, where the students can interact with the material whenever they want, and that's usually correspondence courses. They send you a box and you look at it whenever you want, or you go to the website and you do it when you want. A lot of the MOOCs are like this. You can have a structured course, and that's like your face-to-face courses are like that. There's weekly meetings that occur on a regular basis. And then you can, again, have a mix between these two. So you can have, like, for example, a weekly structure, but it's self-paced during the weekly structure. So the students can take, let's say that you have a weekly quiz, like I do. The students can take the quiz at some point in the week or anytime during the week. depending on how you set it up. The student can watch the lecture anytime during the week. Okay, so it's a thing. Now, what we have found is that the biggest problem is synchronous attendance, because students love to be online, but they don't like it when they have to be there at a certain time, and that creates a problem. So by giving them the option of not doing it synchronous, it does help a lot. All right, that's all for today. Any questions? I would be happy to answer. Maybe we can get this Peggy Semingson. Yeah, would you like to explain what you mean on HiFlex?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't know if my camera's on, but yeah, Cindy can chime in too. We have recently started, or we started during the pandemic unofficially, but we've officially been approved to do HiFlex, which is like you said, flexible learning for busy working adults, and just stream in people, record live class sessions. Some students attend in person, but they're all learning together, and then we use Canvas as a common kind of area and space to do assignments and discuss.
Right. And so the students, it's the same section, right?
It is, yeah, we merge those sections. Yeah. So they're all interacting in some way.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there I am. Okay. Yeah.
Good. Thank you. All right. Okay. Maria says, as an IP online classroom instructor, I get the big, okay. It's more of a comment. All right. Thank you. I guess maybe if I stop sharing. Oh, there was a question already, I think in the, yes. So there was a question in the general thing, which was ESL strategies to teach online. Well, I mean, I guess teaching an ESL class online is, I mean, obviously going to be different than teaching, you know, I don't know, psychology online, right? But the basic idea remains the same. That is, depending on who your population is, if you're teaching children versus adults, you know, you're gonna do different things. But the same principle of engagement and interest, you know, is going to be your central idea. You know, doing it online offers you a variety of options. You know, you can find, I don't know, YouTube videos that you think are interesting, or you can ask the students to find YouTube videos. You know, you ask for music videos, and you know, you may be surprised by what you get. You know, but again, you know, it's you know, I guess it's an embarrassment of riches with the internet. Okay, so I've started thinking of the teacher's role as more of a curator than anything else. So I would say, you know, I don't know that there are specific strategies for ESL, but I would say anything that augments interaction between the teacher and the student is going to be good, and anything that creates interaction across the students, that's also gonna help. So guided activities is going to be your you know, your answer. Yes, if I figure out how to post the slides, I will post them. I tried to do it yesterday, but failed miserably. So,
Well, if you just want to email those to me, I can post them for you.
All right, but
As your moderator.
you know, I'm a man, so I want to fix it without reading the manual. So I'm like, but I'll send you the slides. Thank you, Cindy. You can do it.
So we have just maybe one more minute if anybody has another question. But while you're thinking about your question, Sal, this was amazing. These stats were so interesting. And I know many of us who teach online would love to take a closer look at those. So thanks so much for sharing. This was a wonderful session.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. You have about 15 minutes before your next session starts. So grab a cup of coffee or a fresh cup of coffee, and we'll see you at 9:30 wherever you're headed after this. Thanks.